We are on. Good afternoon. The Design Review Board 1 public meeting of June 12, 2008 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves during the meeting, and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be called to present a case or speak on a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by calling our Design Review Board hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and DRB reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 7 or 15 calendar days of the DRB decision date, depending on the application submittal. The case planner will announce the length of the appeal period with each case. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Eliano?
Here.
Board Member Ellis?
Present.
Board Member Insua?
Here.
Board Member Simonian?
Here.
Board Member Yu?
Here.
The report regarding posting of agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on June 5th, 2008. Oral communications. Do you have any oral communication cards?
No.
Mr. Simonian. So there are no oral communications. That brings us directly to the first and only case on today's agenda, and I'll let Jale introduce that. So.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The project before you with the case number 1 PDR 2008-003B, located at 1547 Bel Drive, was first reviewed by the board on May 1st, 2008. The decision was returned for redesign with 6 comments. The project is basically demolition of the existing single-story, single-family house and the detached garage and construction of a 2-story single-family residence with an attached 3-car garage. This is in R1 zone, and the existing building was built in 1949 in the style of modified ranch. The proposed house will be Mediterranean eclectic, and the lot is 18,352. I'm going to go over the board comments and the way the applicant responds in each case. Number 1, consider mirroring or flipping the building plan on the site. The building plan has been mirrored for an improved relationship with the building to the west. Consider a design for the location and configuration of the garage to reduce amount of hardscaping and increase landscaping. Extra planting is proposed on the center of the driveway, California driveway, and to the side of the 1-car garage. The landscape plan shows trees, shrubs, and planting wherever possible on the site. Otherwise, the location and configuration of the garage remains largely unchanged. Reduce the size of the windows to the garage on the street front and make them appear less grand. The design and the size of these windows remain as the previous submittal. Consider reducing the length of the front leg of the proposal, potentially removing or reducing the breezeway. No change to the breezeway is proposed. The width of the breezeway allows for a significant step back at the second floor, about over 16 feet. If the breezeway remains, provide a door to the kitchen from the breezeway. Doors to the garage and the dining area is proposed from the breezeway. And the last comment is, show the style and design of the gate and fence. Elevation of gate is shown on the site plan, which is a 6 feet tall wrought iron ornamental gate. Well suited to the design of the house, the applicant has agreed to lower the height of the fence and gate and to relocate the assembly back from the front face of the building. The major change to the previous submittal is the mirroring of the building plan. which provides an improvement relationship with the house west of the subject property. The design and the location of the gates have been shown. Staff recommend a condition be added to any approval to reduce the height of the fence and gate to 42 inches and to relocate them back from the face of the house. The staff believe the site plan has been substantially improved by the mirroring of the building and floor plan and on the site, as the board had previously recommended. On the overall architectural design of the project, staff believe it is well designed and suited for the neighborhood. While the arrangement of garage remains substantially the same as the previous submittal, staff believe the placement and orientation of the building with garage door facing away from the street is suitable for the site and the neighborhood. Staff has a draft record of the decision on file. This concludes my presentation. If there is any question, I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Thank you. We have the applicant, Mr. Shahnazarian. If you would please state your name for the record.
Ahmed Shahnazarian with AMAC Group. Basically, as Jale indicated, we take your recommendation and mirror the project. We also try to minimize the garage with creating a tandem garage, but unfortunately by doing that, we have facing a front door at the front of the street, and then if you take a look at the property at the west, it has the same type of a configuration as a garage with the front door facing the street. So with several designs that we done, we felt like that it's much better if we put it from the side rather than from the front of the house. Try to not to create too many garages facing the street. As far as the comment, as far as the mirror, I mean the windows at the garage area, I want to submit several ideas that we tried, but unfortunately we believe that it didn't work. So again, ideas that we feel like this is much more suitable at this time with the same design. Basically, there was an error on a project as far as the windows, which they brought to our attention. As far as the windows are going to be wood pellet windows rather than no guard. There's an error on our part. But I just want to thank you, because by mirroring this project, I think we created a much better environment within this property. So I'm here to answer any questions that if you have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
I have a question. I noticed, has the property been sold since you were here last time?
No.
I noticed the name of the owner has changed on the property. Is that?
Is it changed? No, it
Well,
should be.
over here it's, I'm sorry, down here. It says Gevorgian or Mr. G.
Oh, there's an error in our part. No, it's the same thing.
That's the same, it's the, okay.
Apologies, yeah.
Okay, so that old drawing was wrong?
Yes.
Gotcha, okay.
Apologies.
No, that's okay. Could you clear up for me what, and just on the gate, the applicant has agreed to lower the height and to relocate the assembly back from the front face of the building?
We agreed on relocating it, bringing the size down to whatever the board decision is. But if we change the gate location toward the back, then we block into the wall. We are 5 feet away from the front setback area.
So I guess on the plan as it's shown is where you're proposing to put it. It's not different than what's on here?
No. No, unless if you wish for me to...
No, I was trying to clarify that. Okay.
But the size, the height of it, we have no objection to that. I mean, we can bring it up to 4 feet, 3 feet, or whichever it is.
No, it looks like I like the pattern. It's very nice. And then my last question was, and I think I asked this at the last time, was the basement is still indicated as 5'11"?
Yes, but even if we try to make it, as I said, the owner has a restaurant, and his intentions to just winery purpose.
Right. So
even if we add a floor area to it, even if I bring it up, it doesn't affect anything because it's at the basement and the garage. We're meeting all the garage requirements.
Right. Does that affect? I mean, maybe staff. Does that affect what your developer fees are?
It might affect on the developer, yes, you gotta
Developer
pay.
and the school
if-
fee?
Yeah,
Right.
if we make it, but with the house with this magnitude, it doesn't make it.
Well, that's why I kind of asked the question. I mean, what I know of contracting, that 1 inch, plus or minus 1 inch, it'll be 6 foot. It'll be a full site story.
If
And
the
I'm,
intention was try to create a room, then we would have done it, because the owner has no good, because we would go much more deeper on the ground.
right. Well, that's,
Doesn't-
well, I kind of, it's always kind of like,
But
1 inch difference kind of makes you wonder, well, what's going on? Okay.
The whole purpose was just basically, in my house, I have a 3-car garage, but it's all storage. Please.
Yes. No, you're not the only one in Glendale who stores in the garage. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions for the applicant?
talk about the materials real quick. Can you, this is all we have, right? Can you describe the materials a little bit? Starting from, say, the plaster, the sandstone, white line habra, but it's a screed finish, right? Or is this the latest?
They're together.
Oh, they're together, okay. Yeah, so the... So the windows of the, I remember from the last time, there were the mill guard clad, they're fiberglass on the exterior and wood on the interior, so you can paint the fiberglass. Was there a paint color for the windows? I don't think I
I
saw.
think the color is,
Oh, it's a brown, okay, all right. Yeah, probably they don't want to stand out, I agree with that. And then you have the Coronado stone, which is basically a veneer. And the tile, are they the S shape or are they the barrel? The what?
I think they're the S-shaped tiles.
Okay. So we know the stone, the windows are good, plaster. Okay, well, that's it, I'll make my recommendations, but I think I understand what's going on.
Are these the locations of the trees as they are now? The ones that you're
That's
keeping?
one,
Or are these new?
Those are new.
On the site plan, right? Okay.
I'm sorry, I had another question if you're still...
Yeah, I'm okay, go ahead.
Now, I wanted to see, is there, the front door, is that a custom door, or is that,
Custom door.
so that shows up in the elevations, right?
Goes up in the elevation, yes.
So, but you showed a light color, is that going to be light, or is it going to be brown, like, or is it going to be a wood finish, or?
That one I have to find still.
Okay. I mean, okay, well, we'll talk about those, I'm sure you... Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Yu?
Can we start?
Well, you had a question, I believe?
No, he already answered it. The trees.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I do not have any more name cards, and I see one person in the audience. Would you like to speak on this case?
This point in time, no.
Okay, we can't have cross-communication, but I'm getting a no from the audience. Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this case? Very good. Public portion is closed. Would you like to start this time, Mr. Yu?
Sure, I'll go. I think there were two things that you did change, was the mirroring of the footprint of the building, which I think works out a lot better. You also added some landscaping to the driveway coming up. I guess the other things you didn't really change much on those, but I think I'm okay with, because I was okay with the design as it was for the most part, and I don't know if all those other ones will change my decision, but I think the changes that you have made I'm okay with, and I think I'm ready to support the project as is. maybe attach some of the conditions later on as we speak to it.
We go through it.
Yeah, but I think I'm okay with it.
Thank you. Mr. Aliano?
Okay, thank you. Yes, I concur. I think flipping actually for me works nicely because it aligns the garage with the existing building to the side, and then it sort of gets the mass of the building further back from the street larger. So I'm okay with the decision that you made to flip it. I just had a couple of recommendations. I will support the project, and I'll be brief on my comments. I think general comment, and the reason why I was looking at the material is because I think the house is very nicely designed, and I think in order to pull it off, to make it really look as wonderful as the renderings make it look, you really need to use the best materials you can afford, because otherwise it will become just a bunch of details and decoration that just feels like it's attached to this house. It needs to feel complete. For example, and I believe you answered this question the last time, all the window surrounds, I thought you were proposing to make them in precast. Is that correct? So it would be like a precast material that's sort of it's not plaster. So I would strongly recommend that you maintain that, especially around the large semicircular form with the tall arch windows, and anywhere that we have surrounds of any kind, I would recommend that. I would also recommend that you use parallel tile instead of S-shapes. S-shapes are more commercial, and they sort of, you lose the authentic nature of the tile roof. The windows, I'm okay with that because once you paint the fiberglass, it's going to look like a painted wood window. The stone, it's Colorado stone. It's not really it's an artificial stone. I mean, if you could go a notch higher, it would be great to get some real stone in there. But if you can't do that, then I would recommend that you execute the stone as, as close to a natural finish as possible, so it doesn't look like it's just stuck on. So I have one more item is the main thing. I think the stucco, the La Habra is fine. The La Habra I know also makes a very nice plaster which is applied with a steel trowel and is very, very smooth. On this house, a steel trowel probably, you want to have a consistent color, so you may want to paint it afterwards so you hide all the cracks and the hairline cracks. But that's what I would recommend and strongly consider, because I think it will look really great with the stone. You have a rough finish of the stone and then this very smooth stucco. I think they call it, I forget what La Habra I think calls it Santa Barbara finish, I'm not sure. But if you spec a steel trowel finish, it doesn't matter because it's going to be like a piece of glass. And then you paint it. I think it will look really great, especially when you put it next to the precast surrounds. You get the nice roughness of the precast. It's going to look great. And that's that. And then a couple of questions. One, and I think you answered this the last time, the corbels on the eaves, are those precast or are those painted wood? They're precast. Excellent. So that would be nice. So you get the precast, we don't have a color of the precast, but I'm assuming it would be a little contrasting, right? More like a beige, a darker beige. Okay. All right. That, and lastly, there's one item that I would like Ms. Reich to kind of work with you on to see what really works is, the front entry, the proportion of that arch. If you could look at that with the urban designer, I'm not making any restrictions. I'm just saying just look at it one more time before you build it, because it seems a little tall, and it does compete with the circular form. When you look at them in elevation, the arch is about the same height as the cornice or the corbels of that round form. And it might be nice if it were just a little bit lower, which I think also might get rid of that sort of horizontal pane of glass right above the door, which looks like it's out of place, so that door and the circular portion on top would look unified, That's it. And the door, the front door, I'm assuming you're going to pick a darker color or stained wood would be nice. And that's it. With that, I think I'm pleased with the project, and I look forward to seeing it built so that embellish the neighborhood even more. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Insua?
Sure. I know that when it was first submitted, we had some considerations and some items that we thought could be explored and stuff, and the only one was flipped, and I think that's certainly an improvement because I think the proportions and the rhythm of the neighborhood and its relationship to either side of the structure of the homes on either side is better this way. Although there's some items that when I look at it come to mind. One, that it's a very deep lot, obviously, but relatively narrow in its ratio. So its width of the lot is actually very standard, and you would normally see a lot like this with maybe 120 feet deep, 130 feet deep, something around an 8,000 square foot lot. And these lots are unusual in that way, in that the fronting, when they were laying out this development, I'm sure they just had to rhythm 50 foot, 52 foot, 53 foot. And when they then put them, and if you see when you see this aerial picture, then when you see them on these larger estates, they just started subdividing them, and their depth was probably achieved by, well, there's your neighbor because it's a huge mansion way back there. So for me, the house is important on how, in its proportions, and how it sits on the front and the two sides, because the depth is really not part of the physical structure. So I'm excluding that as part of the neighborhood and the consistency, the mass and scale, the proportions, the light and air, and all those things. I look at primarily the front and the two sides. When I look at the front and two sides on sheet A6, south elevation, I see a house that's very boxy. And I see a house that looks to me very boxy, and then you started applying elements to it. The round turret was applied to the front instead of more integrated and integrated part of the structure. And Mr. Aliano indicated the front entry. You know, it's very tall, and you can see what's trying to be achieved here. They're trying to do a very majestic home. My concern is that does the lot lend itself to a majestic home from the front and from the two immediate sides? Seems to me like people need breathing room. You know, if I started sitting too close to either one of us, it's uncomfortable. But you widen that up and you start getting some breathing and some proportions there. So for me, the front elevation and then the two sides, when you look at sheet A7 and A6, or A7 south elevation and north elevation, you can see that from the two adjacent sides, it's rather a large structure. If you take that large structure and you go back to sheet A1, which is the site plan, you can see that especially on the top, you can see that there's only 6 foot separation. And then if you put that in relation to the adjacent dwelling, which is, I think, a single-story structure, you can start seeing its relationships to its neighbors when you start looking at this house. I think the house needs room to breathe, and I think that the size of the home in those critical areas is overpowering those two adjacent neighbors. So that's a concern of mine, the light and air and the neighbors and the proportions to those houses and those neighbors. Because there's only a 6 foot, side yard or separation there. Again, the proportions for me in the front and the sides and adjacent to the site and its area appears to be too out of scale and too much. The materials, I'm glad that the designer told us that the materials are going to be of a wood or a wood-clad material. I think a beautiful, majestic home of this type deserves that. I'm right on with Mr. Aliano saying that the stucco should be more of a plaster type where they're steel troweled, primered and painted. I think it's indicative of these Mediterranean Spanish Revival homes, which we have a lot of examples in our existing, home inventory from the 20s and 30s and the teens. I think this house is trying to do that. When I look at elevation A7, in the window surrounds. I know that both boards, for a few years now, have been trying to move away from the window surrounds. They seem a little bit contrived and applied to it, and not well integrated, especially if your depth of the windows aren't there. When you usually see surround, you got the surround, the depth of the window. So you got the depth of the window, then the window. So there's a reason why, and often those surrounds, if you look at well-designed homes, those surrounds are part of what goes into the window. So the window itself and the pop-out opening is surround and inside. When you apply them, they look like application. And for me, whether they be precast or styrofoam or EFIS, it's still not that authentic looking, and I've never seen one done well. But if you're going to do it, I would suggest that the sill piece on the bottom extend beyond, and this is just the thought, that the sill piece be a different piece so that there's a breaking up and not just the surround, but maybe the sill and the top. Again, that's the way they designed them back then. With the sill, the water weeps off, and then the surrounds. I think that could help. And for me, the architecture is fine. But I think in this location, in those critical areas of the side yards and front yards, it's a little bit too much. And I think that if you're standing on the side yard, there'll be a lot of vertical height on this house. So I think that in this neighborhood, given the front yard setback, still a little much for me. So, thank you.
Mr. Ellis?
Thank you. Well, I agree with what all of you have said. I do think flipping it definitely has improved it on the way it's set in the lot. You brought up some very interesting points here, especially because I was looking at those side windows and wondering why they didn't quite look right, and I think the window ledge or just actually being an aplattique makes a difference. But, I think the house, when we looked at it on May 1, I thought it was relatively well designed. I think that the size of the lot and the size that's allowed for the house is going to be a problem no matter how you fit it in here. I mean, the second story is certainly fine. It's just a very narrow lot. I would still have a problem with the basement being 5'11" and kind of being an extra room. I mean, let's call it what it is. It's another story or it's a basement area. Might as well make it a height that any contractor or any developer would say, this is a normal height of a floor. But with that, I think with some of the changes that you gentlemen have discussed, I could support the project.
Thank you. Well, I would tend to agree with most of what has been discussed as well. I think flipping it was a good idea, especially because we have those row of cypress trees on the eastern side, and so therefore we've put the bulk on the eastern side next to the existing landscaping, which is mature, and it takes a long time for those trees to get to where they are, and then we create this very nice void on the western side, which works very nicely with the building to the west. So I think as far as placement is concerned, we're at a better place. Certainly understand the thought process behind the garage, where you want to access it from the side. It's a narrow enough lot, so you don't want this huge garage door presence on the street, which is going to take up 2/5, say, of the front, because you have a 50-foot wide lot, and then you have this 20-foot garage door, which will be quite bearing is perhaps a word that we could use. It'll be very strong. And so therefore you flipped it on the side, and the site is deep enough where you have even 3 cars in a row perpendicular to the street. It's not a problem because you do have the depth to allow for that. So I think the parking is well situated as well. There are 2-story homes in the area. In fact, at 1551, I believe, is a 2-story, just 2 homes to the north, and there's a few 2-story homes in the area. So contextually, I believe this home will be compatible with the area because there are some existing 2-story homes. I agree with Mr. Aliona as well in that the entrance needs to be worked out, especially that clear story above that door. There's, I think, just some solutions to that. It seems contrived is probably the best word that pops up at this point in time. The door and the clear story, it doesn't quite follow the rhythm of the design and the overall language of of the home. So I think that'd be a good idea to look into that. The basement, they need storage, so they're providing storage. They're going at a certain height to really call it a basement and to call it a storage as opposed to a basement, because you're not trying to add to the FAR. So I believe it's somewhere the decision was made to call it this storage area. So it's less than 6 feet, so it's considered storage. I see Mr. Ellis's point. The proposed FAR is 21%, well below the what's required or what's allowed. So even if they were to add that as a full-on basement underneath the building, no one would ever see it. And I think in this specific case, it would actually allow cars to be put inside the garage, so we don't have cars parked outside, which is a nuisance to begin with. And so therefore, as one has more storage space, they're able to store it, use it as it's called, as storage, and then therefore they could put their cars in the garage. So that's a non-issue for me as well. So all in all, I support this project. I think it's well done. I believe it'll be a good addition to the neighborhood. And perhaps just 2 conditions. That was the entryway. And the second, I believe, was there were some comments made about the gate perhaps being reduced in height. But besides that, I'm absolutely for it. I think it'll be a good addition. Mr. Insua?
I know that want to make clear that I'm not against a 2-story structure at all. There is plenty of good 2-story structures interwoven with single stories. I think that just for me, the way that this 2-story structure has been executed is a little bit overpowering in those critical areas, the front and the sides, and how it relates to that area and the light and air and the massing and stuff. But certainly never against a 2-story structure.
Thank you.
I guess my one comment would be on the basement, to read it, as long as it's at 5 feet 11 when the plans are done and the cement's hard and the structure's done, I think you're right. I think it's a gamble that it won't be advertised at some place down the line as, 970 square feet larger house than we are sitting here approving today.
That's something that is verified in the field during framing inspection.
An inch in rough framing is, I've lived there and done it, and there's a lot of inches that when you add them up. It's pretty tight tolerance, personally. But
Right, and we can make note of that when they submit for the building permit. We can actually specify that on the building permit application so that when other individuals come and take a look at it, they'll realize that according to their building permit, they were only permitted so many square feet of habitable space and so many square feet of storage.
Okay.
Can I just add one thing? Of course. I'm wondering if we can feel about just requiring them to match this line here with the fence. Just because this is going to be a CMU wall. Just seeing the side of that, I think that'd be so good.
How do you feel about the car backing up and then the fence being right on the edge of the backup space?
Well, because I think the garage actually is about 2.5 feet. So this is.
You might need to speak up a little bit because we can't quite hear you on the microphone.
This is the line of the garage door area, so I think if you back out of here, there's plenty of room. Right it out to here.
Yeah, I think
they just push
3
back.
feet.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, because the plans are 2'6".
Right.
So what we could do, that could be moved back a little bit.
So then there's this.
Correct.
So I don't know. I'm just not too crazy about seeing the side of this, the 6-foot CMU fence wall.
What happens if the iron was wrapped around? So the block doesn't start, opens it up, at that point?
Yeah, it's just because these are such heavy members there.
Right. And there'll be a little piece of the fence showing at the end.
When you're talking about that fence, where is it?
I think it's on the side plan, yeah. Well, just because on this side, then what you'd be looking at on here would be the side of the CMU wall instead of the...
So you're saying put
just
that...
match up with this line.
Yeah. And maybe lower. I mean, I agree with the staff. It's kind of a tall fence. It also makes it even more grandiose.
I think staff had recommended 4'6" or 42 inches.
I mean, you don't really need anything higher than that.
okay with 5 or whatever.
But this is more than 5, isn't it? This is
Yeah,
like
it's
a-
72 inches.
This is
6.
6 feet tall, it's pretty tall.
Is it 6 at the crown? Or
The 6 is a little high, 42 certainly on the
just
low
at the
end.
top? So
You could maybe do
48.
something in,
How about
yeah,
48?
something like that.
it's closer to 7 at the middle, because it's only 6 at the
Sure,
post.
it's got the arch.
Yeah, the arch there.
Allows, you can't get dogs to go in, the stray dogs,
And to clarify, I think,
but not little critters, they're gonna get in there.
I believe that condition was focused on the front, not on the side wall.
Right, the side, right. Well, how do you transition, though?
Yeah, that's kind of, it's going to look kind of weird.
That's where that iron fence down the side for
Why don't we
one.
leave it up to you?
8-foot
4
section.
feet is kind of
You
low.
can review it with them to see what works.
Because I know my dog can hop
So
that. So
what we're hearing is that the fence perhaps should be lower. I think we recommended also that it would be pushed back, not aligned with the front of the house. And not, I'm afraid I'm not quite understanding exactly the input about how it meets the concrete block side fence.
I think if you push it back to the front of the house, you've solved the issue that he's
In
talking
front of the
about.
Yeah.
existing house, the neighbor's house,
to match the,
to align
line
with
of
the
the-
neighbor's house.
Okay, so,
just so you're not looking at the side of the CMU wall as it sticks out. Because there's a side fence wall that they're proposing.
right. My understanding is that the front of this house aligns with the front of the adjacent house. So,
But there's a little step back too, to the garage.
The homes as proposed line up, but then the gate has protruded a few feet south. So as we're looking down at the side of the property, there'll be the CMU wall that pops out for a few feet and then turns around and goes towards the garage.
I think
I
the
see.
neighboring house lines up with this line here.
right.
And the gate right now is proposed to be out here. And so I'm just worried about the CMU wall that comes across.
Yeah, we were proposing to push it back, much further back than just the front of the house.
Go further back than this, then
Yeah.
it's going to impact the garage and how they get out there.
It has to do with the radius, too. See, I think the reason why it's there is because
Yeah, if we go further back than this, then it's going to impact the
they
garage.
lose the radius.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you're fine if it aligns with the front of the house so as not to impact the garage. It shouldn't go forward of,
I mean, they could, like you said, put it here and here, and still, I guess, keep that like that. I don't know, they need to be able to get in here
Yeah.
and do that. I guess if you could work with them, I suppose if you do that, what you're suggesting, if you do that, you could probably bring this, I don't think it's going to hurt the radius at all if you did that.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, just straight
Yeah,
back.
okay, I agree.
Or the whole home could shift back 2 feet.
But, basically that, and then, how do we, then we gotta come, this wall
Okay,
is
I
6
think-
feet, right?
I think we're clear
that's
and
the
we
6-foot wall.
can work with the architect.
So how do we work with the sidewall is 6 feet, but we want to lower the gate? Doesn't work. I mean,
The wall on the
But maybe-
side could transition.
what if you lower, it'll keep the gate this height, but lower the railing on the side of the gate, in other words, because that way, when you get close, in other words, keep the gate where it is, but this fence here, make it lower, so when it gets to the house, it doesn't become the stall element that's hidden in the corner of the... Mr. Chairman, he wants... Please.
Another option that we might do is just keep the gate and then provide landscaping in front of it. That will,
Instead of a fence?
we provide a fence at the back and provide some sort of a landscaping.
Or in front of the fence, so you can transition into
Transition
that.
it, then that way we just break it down. And we keep the fence maybe up to 5 feet or something, so that way,
I'm okay with 5 feet, because 4 feet's,
Yeah.
I think my dog can hop a 4 foot fence. So I'm worried.
and
The
then we
side,
do
the side is
landscaping.
going to be 5 feet, all the walls around the property is 5 or 6.
Yeah, well, we could have the wall up to the existing, the neighbor's garage. At that level, maybe we can shift the building itself a little bit back anyway, with demoing it. shifting it back and create a wrought iron over there, that section too.
So you can keep this 5 feet until you turn the corner, so that from the street, everything looks 5 feet? Okay.
The wall can be stepped also.
Sure, right.
If the wall steps, or it's 5 feet when it meets the gate, and then steps up
Right,
to
further
whatever.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. All right. Good.
Do we have any more questions? Thank you. I don't want to always appear to be like the poop head, my kids would say, but when we do something as significant as this in such an interesting neighborhood, an eclectic neighborhood, I don't mind being a poop head a little bit to make sure we get it right, so please forgive me for continuing to push against this issue. If you look at drawing A1, which is right here, and this is the adjacent neighbor, 6-foot space, 6-foot fence, and then this is the adjacent neighbor's driveway and stuff. So if you go from this part here to this part here, which is the fireplace, we go to this elevation here, and this whole area right here, which is very vertical, 6 feet away with a 6-foot high fence, is right into this neighbor that over here used to have nice light and air. And that from this whole area, this mass is when he comes out of his house, here's the wall, here's 6 feet, another 6-foot high wall, and when he comes out of his house, which he's always been enjoying, nice light and air, he's going to have this house from here all the way to there. I have a problem with that kind of architecture. I have a problem because it's not just the architecture. The architecture is fine, but contextually is the problem. I went online, and there's a great website that we have in our office that for free you can orient it and turn the house around. Here is the house that's adjacent. Here is the neighbor, and that black shadowed area is a representation of what that guy's going to see. I don't think that's good architecture. I mean, the architecture for me is fine. We can tweak what we want. We can add the surrounds. We can add the sills. We can make it smooth trowel. We can not make it smooth trowel. We can make it mill guard windows, or we can put Pella windows. For me, the issue is not the quality. That's always an important issue. You can't escape that. But the issue is contextually. How does this house sit on this 53-foot wide lot in these adjacent neighbors that had these homes that were designed smaller stories? I think contextually it's not in the right direction. This is a large wall. When this guy looks out his house, there is the wall for a height of 20 some odd feet because it's raking back. I don't think that's good architecture. And one of the things that we have to always be sensitive to is the mass and scale and its context in the existing neighborhood. And for me, this misses it. I think that they can, and especially on a home that's, you can't deny it's majestic. It deserves air. It deserves better setting. And to put these kind of homes, or this kind of home in this site is inconsistent with what I see in neighborhoods that work well. And again, for me, it's not the steel trowel, the wood material, the plaster, the barrel, or the S-shaped tile. All those are very important, but if you don't get the context right, they're just, I don't know, there's a lot of sayings that you talk about that. And I think this house misses in that area. We have great examples of additions. I'm not against second stories, never against second stories and the homeowner's right to develop their property. But you can't run away from that. And if you do, you drive down the street and you go, oh, goodness, that was big. And then your next door neighbor goes, oh, my gosh, look at this thing that was built. I think we're missing here that point, and it's contextual. So anyway, I think we know. For my time.
I think we know which way you're going to vote on this
Well,
project.
it's not a matter of voting. For me, it's a matter of, everything. So anyway, thank you for the time. I just wanted to just get that out because these are such important homes, especially homes that are being demolished and you're building a new one. If someone's doing a second-story addition in a modest neighborhood, a second-story addition tied into the existing design, knock yourself out. But this is a bulldozer and then building this. I don't think it fits well.
All right, well,
Can I just say something? I agree with you with what you're saying. And that was sort of my primary concern when I saw the first proposal, was this whole sort of bowling alley that's created on the upper side of it, and which was my recommendation to flip it, just because I really didn't like that, especially when you're talking about that same face being opposite, 6 feet on either side. But I think the way it's laid out now, there is enough space on the lower side. I mean, we're looking next to the garage, and there's plenty of space between the houses themselves, not taking into account the property line of it. I think there's enough air space between the upper portion of the house and the courtyard that's created. Ideally, these houses would be, of course, sort of centered and sort of within themselves with all this airspace around it. But I think that for what the site is and what the location of the houses that are neighboring it, I think this is the best solution for the house that they're putting in.
Well, I think that's it's important for these projects to come in front of a board, is because we're 5 individuals, and then we have 5 different viewpoints, 5 different philosophies, and 5 different approaches to design. And it's okay to disagree. In fact, when we do disagree, it's healthy dialogue, and it stimulates good conversation. And in fact, most of the time we agree as a board.
That's true.
But there are times where we disagree. So this happens to be one of those times, and so perhaps we could try to wrap up this case with some sort of approach, and we could perhaps entertain some motion as to how we want to conclude it, because I think we've gone through the whole thing.
Right. Well, it's a lesson learned for me, I think. Mr. Hinsler makes good points. The thing is that we've gone this far already, and this is something that probably we should have nailed at the very beginning, if the whole board felt that way. But there's always that balance. But I will support the project because of what I just said, but I think we should, in the future, if we feel that things are completely out of place, we need to let the applicant know that at the very beginning as a board, because maybe Mr. Hinsler, I'm sure he made the same comment at the last time, but some of us didn't pick up on it, or some of us figured that it was okay.
Or maybe there was difference of approach on it.
Yeah.
Because we had a very heated discussion about it last time around, and I don't think we missed it, and I don't think we made a mistake and not really discovered all the facts. It was just difference of opinion.
Right.
And I think the same exists today. So I don't think we were negligent, or I don't think we were...
Yeah, I'm not saying that.
and I don't think we're negligent.
Yeah.
Of course.
I think that we were saying that. When you look at item number 2, item number 4, we were talking about those things. We don't want to...
Well, you were talking about it.
Oh, but we put them here.
I think everybody could throw out a condition and stuff.
No, well, the breezeway actually, I think, was Mr. Aliano.
Yeah, I think it was
It's not Ivan.
I think what I like to say is that the problem with, I like to close with this because, for me anyways, is that I would recommend, when you present projects in the future, is because your project, when they come to us, they look so polished already. It's very hard to really, tweak things because, you have to invest more time to come back and change. And I would recommend that maybe when you're doing something like this, that come in perhaps with a plan and maybe very sort of rough drawings that sort of show the general massing without getting too much into the rendering and the polishing of it. That way, if you have to go back and redo some things, it won't hurt so much, or it won't, I know it won't hurt you, but it will hurt the pocketbook. So that's what I'm getting at, because I think that would have helped, to be able to have some preliminary discussion. And I know that you probably had that with the staff and Ms. Reich. But at this point, I think, we reached the point where we have to make a decision, so.
I think Ms. Reich has a question or a comment. Ms. Reich?
I just wanted to mention that part of what staff is doing is ordinance is to work with our applicants.
Thank you.
Bad phone.
To work with our applicants in advance, and there may be some cases where preliminary will come before you, but as a matter of the ordinance, preliminary does go to staff. I just wanted to respectfully remind you.
So how do we,
I mean, I think we should be informed again. If applicants are coming to staff, this is for me, of course, if applicants are coming to staff and they're getting assistance, direction, support, call it what you may, and the houses still are box-light, in my opinion, that's not good design. And I think that is inconsistent with what we're looking for, which is good design. So if they're working with staff and you're designing and you're coming up with this, and you say, well, we worked with staff for the last 3 or 4 months, and we believe that this is good, well, who is then designing it? The applicant, the staff, and who is then supporting that? So I think it's going to be very tricky, in my opinion, to work with staff and say, well, we've worked on it and we've massaged it for 3 months, and now you've seen it this way.
If I may, and staff will be bringing forward an orientation item to talk more about how we're implementing the new ordinance. But just to remind you, we do our best to work with the applicants, and even if and we actually do our best to advise our applicants to bring something that looks very presentable, and the information is all complete. The board has every authority to make any comment that they like, even if staff is recommending approval. The board can disagree and go back for redesign. So I just wanted to clarify that point.
Thank you. So with all that said, I think we should try to wrap this case up, because I think a lot of those matters are going to come up with some of those orientation meetings that we're going to have in the future. So does someone want to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the project with the conditions stated previously.
May I read back some of the notes, please? Here's what we've heard, that the fence should be lower, and that a location and transition to the block on the side should be reconsidered and reconfigured. We also had some comments regarding the materials, and I'll just read them and you can let us know if that's for consideration or condition. Precast sills and trims, as presented, are an important component of the design, and a recommendation that the trim could potentially be reconsidered with the sills extending beyond the jambs, or perhaps even the jambs disappearing, as was more typical in the Spanish style. Recommend barrel roof tile rather than the S-shaped tile being utilized. Detail the coordinado stone as much as possible to look as if it's real stone rather than veneer. Recommend steel trowel plaster with paint finish. Work with staff to reduce the entry arch at the front, and consider stained wood for the front door. We could include all those as recommendations or conditions, and we did include a draft record of decision. If you'd like, I can read that into the record. Overall, the location of the building, driveway, and garage appears appropriate to the project site and context, particularly since the building floor plan has been mirrored from the last time. The project mass and scale remains as the previous submittal and is broken down into a number and variety of forms, is appropriately sized to the site and fits well in the neighborhood. And the architecture is consistent with the Mediterranean eclectic style. The building appears well designed and appropriate to this handsome and eclectic neighborhood.
I would support making them conditions. And I think maybe this is probably after the the horses out of the barn. In the second paragraph of the draft record, where the project's mass and scale remains as previously submitted, is broken down in a number of varieties and forms, I would just end the sentence there.
But do we have to read that into the motion?
No, we can.
Yeah, so I would probably second the motion with what you said, to make those suggestions conditions. And then that just becomes part of the record, but not necessarily part of the motion. Because I'm trying to be respectful of Mr. Insua as well, because I do agree with his comments. Some of those statements are kind of contradictory.
Mr. Yu motion to approve the project with comments, and Mr. Aliano seconded. This is the roll call. Board Member Aliano?
Yes.
Board Member Yu?
Yes.
Board Member Insua?
No.
Board Member Ellis?
Yes.
Chairman Simonian?
Yes.
Motion passes by 4-1. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes, and we have two, one from the system panel from May 1st of 2008, and the second from May 29th, which was the regular session. I was not part of the assessment panel, and so do we have a quorum on that? I assume
Actually,
do.
we were waiting, the alternative assessment panel was comprised of Board Member Insua, who was actually the chair, and so we've been waiting for you and Board Member Yu to actually vote on it, for you to sign it.
I recall reading it when we first
think a
got
long
it,
time ago.
and I was comfortable with it when we read it, or when I read it way back then. I have no
Okay.
idea what it said today. At the time, I was comfortable with it. So I'd like to make a motion to, no, I think Mr. Yu needs to.
I need to make the motion.
Yes, motion by Board Member Yu, and you
I'll
can,
second.
well, Board Member Ellis was present, so yes, so Board
And paying
Member
attention.
Ellis. And so in terms of a roll call, Board Member Yu,
Yes.
Board Member Ellis,
Yes.
Board Member Insua.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously 3-0.
Sign
And then we have the meeting minutes of May the 29th.
I was there, right? Yeah.
Mr. Aliano, Mr. Ellis, Mr. Simonian, and Mr. Yu.
Yes.
That was a short one, yeah.
It was a
That
short.
was from the case. I have no objection.
It was just one item
Okay.
for Anthony's.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Yes.
I have a motion by Board Member Yu, a second by Board Member Aliano. Board Member Aliano,
Yes.
Board Member Ellis,
Yes.
Board Member Simonian,
Yes.
Board Member Yu.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0. That concludes the agenda items, and there are no staff announcements.
And I don't think there's any more oral communication since we have an empty auditorium here. And so does someone want to make a motion to
Move to
adjourn?
adjourn?
Second.
It's 6:07. Thank you very much.
Go
Lakers.
Go Lakers.